And we are not outsourcing our coverage of American politics. We rely upon family for that. And Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent, is with me. We'll start with the head of the Fed, Simon. We'll start with Jerome Powell, because it's probably the best example today of stuff that would have been absolutely front and centre and deadly serious and all that we could talk about under any other president. But under Donald Trump, it's just one on a long list of things that we might.
Yes, absolutely, James. This is, of course, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, America's independent central bank. The Federal Reserve, of course, sets monetary policy here in the United States with vast implications for the rest of us all around the world without political interference from the White House or from Congress. And what Jerome Powell learnt on Friday was that he was the subject of a criminal investigation being launched by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney here in the District of Columbia, and not any Trump-appointed U.S. attorney. Her name is Jeanine Pirro, and that name may ring bells for some of our listeners because she was, during the Biden administration, one of the most outspoken, loud-mouthed personalities on Fox News, openly supportive of President Trump. She's a former judge in Westchester County in New York. So her reward was to be appointed to this U.S. attorney's position in the District of Columbia, and she issued subpoenas, unprecedented, to the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell becoming the first ever Fed chair to come under criminal investigation in what is undoubtedly a trumped-up investigation into the amount of money the Fed has spent renovating its headquarters here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump has a real bugbear about it. He actually confronted Jerome Powell on camera several months ago, presenting Jerome Powell in a kind of almost a Volodymyr Zelensky moment, with a bill of particulars, the president claiming that the money's all been misspent, and Jerome Powell on camera, caught by surprise, looks at this document and says, no, Mr. President, you've got this wrong because you've included the costs of another building that isn't part of these renovations at all. Nonetheless, Jeanine Pirro has clearly taken her cue from the White House, knows that Donald Trump wants to get rid of Jerome Powell, knows that he actively wants to control the Fed, wants to put a pliant Fed chair in who will take his calls and act on his commands when the President of the United States picks up the phone and tells the Fed chair to lower interest rates. He wants a Fed chair who's going to snap to attention. What I think they didn't count on was the reaction to all of this. And it's looking very clear that Jeanine Pirro's overreached. And I think the White House is in shock over the reaction, because on Capitol Hill, even among normally loyal supporters of President Trump, Republicans are recoiling from it. And of course, around the world, so are other central bank governors issuing a stark warning of what's going to happen if Jerome Powell is ousted over this. But of course, they're still going to have to deal with the fact that in May, Jerome Powell is leaving office and Donald Trump's about to name his successor. And it will be a man who does Donald Trump's bidding.
Who nominated Jerome Powell for the job back in 2017?
Yes, well, extraordinarily, it was a man called Donald Trump, but he doesn't talk very much about that anymore. Instead, he blames Joe Biden for keeping Jerome Powell on. I mean, what this is an effort to pierce the independence of one of the last institutions standing here in the United States. And I think it's important to underscore, James, that all of this was playing out yesterday at the very moment that 6 prosecutors with the Department of Justice were resigning their posts in Minneapolis because they were being ordered by the no longer independent Department of Justice here in Washington to investigate not the killer ICE agent who shot Renee Nicole Good dead last week, but Ms. Good's widow. They were being ordered to investigate the widow and to see what kind of connections she had to that underground conspiracy of far-left radicals that Donald Trump claims are trying to stop ICE and the Border Patrol from their thuggish tactics on the streets of America. So the Department of Justice, traditionally independent, that's already gone. That is his Bureau of Personal Retribution. The Fed, still independent, clinging on, and will, I think, until May. But after May, don't count on it.
I'm tempted to get you to say that last bit again, but I won't. The Department of Justice investigating the widow of the woman who was shot in the face and lied about by Donald Trump and all of his cronies, while praising and offering hero status to the man who killed her, and then...
And specifically telling those prosecutors that they were not to investigate the killer ICE agent. I mean, so 6 of them walked out yesterday. And, you know, we've seen similar incidents taking place in other parts of the country with DOJ officials quitting. But the Department of Justice at this point, like so many other institutions, completely enthrall to the president.
Speaking of ICE, the extraordinarily popular YouTuber Joe Rogan, who was widely regarded as having played quite a key part in delivering some votes to Donald Trump, has been unexpectedly outspoken on the killing of Renee Nicole Good.
Yes, he has. He was doing an interview with the Libertarian Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is very hostile towards ICE and this and its operations around the country. I mean, he comes at it from a different perspective of being hostile to big government. He wants a really small government. And Joe Rogan became very outspoken. He asked if the United States, are we really going to be like the Gestapo? He said that ICE is operating all over the country illegally. He said that the killing of Renee Nicole Good was very ugly, horrific, and in a fresh challenge to all of those Trump supporters out there who keep insisting that Renee Nicole Good was trying to kill the ICE agent, trying to ram him with her car, even Joe Rogan takes the view that she was kind of turning the car away at the time that she was shot by that ICE agent. And I think this does indicate that, as we've talked about before on the programme, James, there is a moment at which the things that Donald Trump and his henchmen and women are doing all over the country are so profoundly un-American that someone like Joe Rogan, who I think would, you know, absolutely characterize himself as a proudly American patriot, not in the political sense that Donald Trump uses that patriot word, people look at what happened on the streets of Minneapolis last week and think that it was profoundly un-American, and it is profoundly un-American that there is going to be absolutely no sanction on that killer ICE agent. And I think it's a challenge for those people that are still out there insisting that, as the Vice President of the United States put it last week, it was a justified killing of Renee Nicole Good by that ICE agent because she was trying to attack law enforcement officers. There is not a shred of evidence to support that contention.
And unlikely ever will be. A final word, and it'll have to be brief, on somebody, I think in Detroit, finally managing to speak a little bit of truth to power. So Donald Trump was touring a Ford manufacturing plant yesterday, and it didn't go entirely according to plan because one of the people watching on from up above, possibly a Ford employee, possibly someone else who was just at the factory, started screaming at Donald Trump that he was a paedophile protector. At which point Donald Trump engaged with eye contact with the man, gave him the middle finger and mouthed more than once that the man should F off, a response that the White House has described as appropriate given the circumstances. I think what it does is underscore that the Jeffrey Epstein issue is not going away. For all of the distraction we've seen, Venezuela, Greenland, Iran, everything that's been going on, the Jeffrey Epstein issue and the fact that Donald Trump's pliant Department of Justice is still sitting on 2 million documents they are legally required to put into the public domain is seen by many Americans as a core issue, and they view what Trump is doing as distraction. They believe part of a cover-up of what Epstein was up to and what Donald Trump's relationship was with him. Simon Marks, many thanks indeed. That is such an important observation at the end there, that it will all still be there. regardless of how many wars he starts or invasions he undertakes or presidents he kidnaps. It will all still be there, and people are increasingly concerned by it.